Welcome to the third video for how to prepare, plan and write and present your talk presentation. In this video we'll be really focusing on the TKPPD and I really want you to be starting to think about helping myself and helping my class in filling this out. To start with, I just thought it'd be worthwhile just reflecting on the main objective of the talk presentation, which is to assess the candidate's ability to analyse real-life situations from a talk perspective. And this is how you're going to be marked, and this is how it's going to determine what mark you get from your presentation. This ability that you can show to analyse the real life situation from a talk perspective and with talk language and talk vocabulary. Now the TKPPD is very important. It's a planning and presentation, and it gives you the opportunity to work through something, and it gives you direction and helps you fill out the different parts of and complete your presentation, really. So it's really meant to help you. The other thing is it's going to be used by the examiners to moderate the teacher's assessment of you, and so it's really important. All the content that's in your presentation needs to be in the TKPPD as well. It's not just something extra at the end. It's part of the whole presentation process. So all along the way in your presentation, in your planning, in your writing, in your research, in your constructing of knowledge questions, you really need to be thinking about filling in your TKPPD as you go along. And this is really super important. And so you need to have other people check this and help you. And I think one really good solution that I'd like to see everyone use is to have some peer assessment going on. And that will help put pressure on each of you, but also it will actually check you, because if your writing and planning is substandard and the mark awarded is not at the correct standard, then the whole class is going to get moderated down. And so it's very important that your TKPPD reflects the exact standard that your presentation is. And that brings us to the key point. The TKPPD is internally assessed alongside the presentation. The form is used for external moderation, but the TKPPD is internally assessed. It's going to be marked, just like your presentation is going to be marked. And if there's difference between your presentation and the TKPPD, then the lower mark will count. Okay, and you need to make sure you provide a hard copy to the teacher at the start of your presentation. Just to help you focus, here's the component grade boundaries. So these are the grade boundaries for May 2016, I think, and the mark range out of 10 there for the presentation. So if you get a 2 or 3, then you've got yourself a D. Okay, so everybody knows that moderation is going to happen, and we don't know who's going to be moderated, so that means we all need to do a good job of this, because a small number is going to be picked at random, and then the examiner is going to look at them and see whether the TKPPD form justifies the marks given by the teacher. And so it's very important that the teacher gives realistic marks here, not overly generous marks, but realistic marks about the standard of your work. Otherwise, the consequences will be bad for everyone. So what I'd like to do for the rest of this little presentation is that we'll just really look into how we can do the PPD, how we can fill out the PPD well, what strategies we can use, how we can look at some forms, we can deconstruct them. We'll look at what the examiner says a little bit and what the subject reports say, and then we want to be looking at what I can take back to my class and back to my writing that will help me do better. Okay, so we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it now. So here's the instructions from the ACC about how to fill in your PPD. So you have to describe. One box lets you describe. Another box wants you to state the knowledge question. The next box you have to explain the connection. And we'll go through these in a bit more detail. The next box is outline, and the next box is show. But just before we have a really good in-depth look at those describe and state and explain, we'll just have a quick look at the global impression marking idea again. And the idea here is that you're showing how top concepts can have practical application. You've got a clear real-life situation. You're formulating a single knowledge question, not many knowledge questions, just one. You're deploying examples and forming arguments, and then you're somehow showing these insights and analysis back to other real life situations in a somehow typical manner. Let's also just take a quick look at what the form looks like. This is the TKPPD as you're going to get it in PDF, editable PDF format, or probably we would encourage you to be filling it out in ManagePack. You can see here you've got describe your real life situation, state your central knowledge question, explain. All of this has to happen in under 500 words, okay? And then we go further on here to the second page where you outline how you intend to develop your argument. Then you show the significance of your conclusions. And then on the third and last page is where the teacher is going to write the mark and their comments. And everybody has to sign this. Okay, so let's take a look at the first box, to describe your real life situation. In here, you really need to make your description clear. Don't write vague sentences. The real life situation needs to be substantive and concrete. You can't just choose something that's got no substance to it. It needs to be controversial. It needs to have some impact in the world. It needs to be affecting people in some way so that you can extract a decent knowledge question from it. And we really need not to invent situations that are superficial and or ethical discussions, etc., because lengthy descriptions are going to be ineffective. The second box is where you're going to state your central knowledge question. Remember, it's only one question, and you must express it as a question. You can use the knowledge question builder that I've talked about. You need to use talk vocab like we showed you, and you need to use those sentence starters and get the talk vocab in there. So you need to clearly state your question. It must be open-ended, it must be about knowledge, and it must use talk vocabulary. You need to check it with several people, several teachers preferably as well, and all of this whole question must be extracted from your real life situation. Okay, I looked at the subject reports for 2016, and they listed a number of mistakes that people make with knowledge question mistakes. So we really need to pay attention here. Need to make sure that the question that you're extracting from the real life situation is a second order question, okay? It's about knowledge, it's not about the situation. And really try to avoid these questions about ethical considerations. You know, the possession of firearms, or to what extent is it ethical to prevent immigration? Okay, these are not second order questions because they're rooted in, they're too strongly in a topic area. And they're strongly focused on ethics, not on knowledge. And so you'll end up with this ethical dilemma situation rather than a presentation about how the knowledge is constructed in your real life situation. So really, it's really important, don't start your presentation until you've come up with a really good quality central knowledge question. Okay, the next box is about you explaining the connection between your real life situation and your knowledge question. So you must clearly explain this, or you can say it another way if you like. But what's needed is that there's an explanation of why the central knowledge question is raised. And it should be a question about knowledge which you yourself could ask. So you're walking down the street, you see this real life situation happen in front of you, and you might ask the question, well, why did the people act like they did in that situation? That's not really like a knowledge question, but it could be developed into one. So the common mistakes that the subject report pointed out in this regard was that all too often candidates they repeat the real life situation again. They're not actually explaining the connection. You need to really explain the connection here with your question and the real life situation. Because in many real life situations, more than one knowledge question could come out of it. And so that's why this connection part is so important. Now there's way too much text on this slide, but it's still an important slide because we need to learn how to outline. You need to outline how you intend to develop your presentation. And that's with respect to perspectives, subsidiary knowledge, which means less important knowledge questions and arguments. And then you've got to really sort of just show how this goes. Now you can do it in bullet point form, but you've got to make sure you outline how your real life situation and your plan is going to help you develop different perspectives. You can define your terms and concepts. However, this needs to go further, and you need to really start once again demonstrating some second order examination of the topic here. Okay, so a first order question is all about what do you know. A second order question is about how do you know that. It's more of the meta question. Okay, so and we can't just make simplistic walk interpretations, we've got to demonstrate that our argument's making some progress. We need to show that we're going to analyze our knowledge question and that we're going to include some different perspectives in relation to this. And we're going to use some examples and arguments, and we're not going to just use personal opinion. Some extra hints for the outline section is that you really need to avoid just talking about your structure. You need a list of headings or questions, not an outline. The outline needs to have top concepts and top terminology being used. And it must present the ideas that will be developed, okay, with respect to the perspectives. So it's a talk presentation. So the outline must be second order as well. So it must be talking about how you're going to do it and why you're going to do it, and not just about claims and questions. Okay, so there's some common mistakes in the outline as well, and that's that candidates, you, are not completing the form with enough detail, and so the examiner can't see how the real life situation's been analysed. So you really need to outline your arguments in here, and how your knowledge is being constructed, or how they've constructed the knowledge. And the other concern from the examiner's perspective is that there's not enough depth to many real life situations, and so therefore the outlines are staying at a sort of a claim and factual basis. The last box that you've got to fill in is where you have to show your conclusions have significance for the real life situation and beyond. Beyond is a really important word here. This is your real chance to demonstrate that the presentation is important and it's relevant to everyone. It's relevant in a wider sense. When you bring it back above that top waterline into the real world again, you're going to show links to other real life situations. And so the role of the knowledge question is what helps you to do this, and helps you to take one situation and find out the common things in it that you can use in your construction of knowledge and in the world beyond, that actually help us to live and work and play in the world and to make sensible decisions. You must draw some conclusions, and you must show how your arguments have progressed from at the beginning to at the end, and maybe even how you've changed your argument. And that way you'll really show how meaningful the knowledge question is to your real life situation. So what can I do to learn more? You make sure you ask your teacher for old TKPPD forms from the school, especially ones returned from the examiner, because they'll have comments on them, and then you note these things down and get your hints in order. And remember that the presentation is really about a focus on your knowledge question, not a focus on your real life situation. Now, I was going to finish this video with some examples of what the teacher can do on the TKPPD, because the teacher has to fill in the form as well, but I'm going to make a separate video for that because this one's getting too long. So the next video will show how the teacher has to write comments on there, and how you can really help the teacher to be able to write the right things by filling in your part of the TKPPD well as well. So I'll just remind you at the very end, it's your TKPPD, and the TKPPD is going to be marked just like your presentation is going to be marked. So it's really important that you make the effort to do well with it. Thank you.